guys, so today we're going to be making a couscous salad. I've got a couple of different types of couscous here. I've got some plain couscous on the left, I've got whole wheat, but it doesn't have to be. And then I've got a packet of couscous. I would rather you use the plain couscous, this one here, because this one's already got lots of ingredients added to it, and it might start tasting a bit odd if you start adding lots of things to it. I really do like these packets though, I do buy them a lot, and these particular ones are really nice with some roasted vegetables in, but we're going to be making more of a cold salad today. So first things first, I'm going to put my small bowl on top of my scales, make sure that it's set to 0 and G, and then I'm going to measure out 100 grams of couscous, which is how much we're going to be using. Please don't be tempted to just change the quantity, because if you change the quantity of couscous, then your quantity of water will need to change as well. This is enough to sort of do a couple of side dishes or one very hungry person for a main course. So I've got my 100 grams, I'm going to put that into my bowl. And the next thing I'm going to do is to measure out my water using my kettle. So I've literally just boiled my kettle. I've been careful to make sure that it's between the maximum and the minimum mark. That's freshly boiled, so I'm going to bring that over to the scales. And unfortunately, my jug that I've got at home, all of the markings have come off of there, so I'm going to use this little toddler cup actually, and the markings are a bit clearer on there. So I've got the 200 mark near, so that's 190. We want 175, which is going to be about here. But for extra accuracy, I'd recommend that you put your jug onto the scales, set it to 0, and then carefully pouring the boiling water in. We're going to measure it up to 175. A couple of grams plus or minus with your measuring is absolutely fine. So I've got 173, that's okay. And then I'm just going to pop my stock cube into that, give it a stir with a spoon until it's dissolved, and then we're going to pour it, or a fork, and then we're going to pour it in on top of the couscous and just leave it. So when the stock cube was dissolved, I poured it in. I'm just going to give it a little stir with the fork, and then that's just going to sit there for a couple of minutes, maybe 5 minutes. All of that stock's going to absorb into the couscous, and then I'm just going to leave it to one side to cool down. You can see all the steam coming off it. And in the meantime, I'm going to prepare all of the salad ingredients to go. Next thing to do is to prepare our vegetables. It should be one medium tomato. I've only got small ones, and I'm not particularly keen on them, so I'm going to keep it that small one. I've got a nice big chunky bit of spring onion there. I've got about a quarter of a cucumber. I've got half a yellow pepper. If it was an orange pepper or a red pepper, that'd be fine. We're just using yellow because we've already got red from the tomato, and then we've also got the orange there from the apricots. You can use a few herbs. I haven't actually got any fresh herbs, so I'm just going to add a little bit of dried parsley in with mine. And I'm going to add that in now actually, just put a little sprinkle in and give it a stir. But if you've got fresh parsley, then you'll chop that up on your board with the rest of the ingredients. Give that a stir. Now these ingredients here I'm going to give a wash because they've grown in some soil and they might have pesticides or soil on, so I'm going to give them a wash under some running cold water. My ingredients, as I'm filming this myself, I'm going to struggle a little bit one-handed, but I'll try and show you. First thing I'm going to do is to prepare the pepper, and I'm just going to cut out all the green top and all of the seeds on the inside and just scrape all of those out. So I managed to get myself an assistant, and what I'm going to show you here is just chopping the peppers into slices. We've got two different types of cut that we use. We've got the claw hold and the bridge hold. So for this I just used my my claw hold, and I moved my fingers back as I needed to. Then you're going to take each strip, using the claw hold again, you're just going to cut each of the strips there into about a 1 centimetre square. Once you get a bit more confident, you might like to take a couple of pieces at a time to do, and then just work your way through all of the pieces of pepper until you've got them all chopped. The next one then is the cucumber. We want to cut this up into about a 1 centimetre dice as well. I'm going to use a bridge hold to cut this into 3 strips. So I think for the size of my cucumber that's going to be about right. Then I can put the flat side down on the board and use a claw to cut each one into 3 again. Now, when I cut this on the side, using a claw hold again, keeping my fingers right out of the way, I'm going to be cutting that up into a dice. Now remember, we're making a salad. We don't want to eat it with a knife and a fork and have to cut pieces. We want the pieces to be bite-sized, okay? So just to remind you, a bridge is where you've got your hand looking like a bridge, the knife goes under the bridge and you're cutting, and your claw is where your fingers and your thumb are behind the knife so you don't accidentally cut them. Next one then is the spring onion. I'm just going to cut the end of the spring onion off. I've got a little bowl for my waste. Make sure there's no layers which need peeling off. Sometimes you get a dry layer that just needs removing. And then we tend to remove the top leaves as they start getting a little bit woody towards the end. And then we're going to just, using a claw hold again, slice this really finely until you get to the end and everything's diced up. With regards to the apricots, we're going to cut those into little strips using a claw hold and then turn them on their side. Dice those a little bit smaller because the flavour's really intense with these. So we're going to cut those up into sort of 3mm square pieces. I'll just show you one more. We've got 4 of those. So you're cutting it into strips and then turning it on its side and dicing it really finely. Okay. Last but not least, then we're going to do the tomato, and the tomato then would normally be a bit bigger than this, but you can use a a bridge hold, knife under the bridge to cut it into slices. Now it can be a little bit slippery, a tomato, and they do cut better with a knife with a serrated edge. It's also easier to cut if you're cutting it this side rather than skin side, because the skin's quite slippery. So I'm going to have skin side down on this occasion, and then turn them the other way and dice them. Now I'm not that keen on tomatoes, so I'm cutting my tomatoes quite small. All right, it's your choice. Okay, so I had a brainwave. I had some sun-dried tomatoes in the fridge, so I've put them in instead of the fresh tomatoes. So I've got all my vegetables and my apricots chopped now. I've got nothing bigger than about a 1 centimetre dice. So I'm going to go to my couscous and just give it a little bit of a stir, just to break the pieces up. Hopefully that's cooled down. If it hasn't, then don't add your ingredients yet. And then we're just going to pop them all in. So we've got 1/4 of a cucumber, 1 spring onion, half a pepper, a little bit of tomato, 4 apricots, and then give that a stir. And that's going to be a little bit on the dry side, and it could lack in flavour a little bit. So then you can choose to add a dressing. I've got a little vinaigrette dressing here. I'm going to give it a bit of a shake, so because sometimes all of the herbs and things float, sort of go to the bottom. And we want a couple of tablespoons of this in there. We normally use measuring spoons for accuracy. If you're going to use the spoon out of your drawer, you might find that actually it's more of a dessert spoon size. So let's just try that theory out. So if I measure 1 spoon out of my drawer, and then I pour it into my measuring spoon, that's a little bit shy of the 15 ml. So there's 15 ml in a measuring spoon. So a couple more mils, and that's 1. And my second one in there. And give everything a mix together. You can decide what vinaigrette you use or what salad dressing you use. There's loads of different ones out there. Give it a stir. And if you're making this at home, you can add any salad ingredients to it that you like. You could add some olives if you wanted to. And couscous also works really well with hot vegetables that have been roasted, so roasted aubergine, peppers, courgettes, mushrooms, tomatoes in there. So do have a play around with the recipe and find some alternatives to mine.